Ms. Polisky, let's talk about campuses for a minute. Nothing creates more friends for the United States of America than time in the United States of America. And this research discussion is one discussion. Another discussion is there are lots of Chinese students on campuses that have fine business schools, that have good health programs of various kinds, and other programs that don't do a lot of research. What are the dangers of us closing the door to smart young Chinese people who want to come here and spend a couple of years, and how do we thread that needle?
Senator, that's a really important point. And it's really important to make that to distinguish between undergraduates, graduate students that are studying things that that we're concerned with. And I think it circles back to the remarks that I made about acknowledging how different our systems are. Because we can't possibly understand, I think my colleagues also spoke to this, the amount of pressure that some of those students can be under if their families are still in China. The most recent Global Human Rights Watch report that came out talks about surveillance happening on U.S. campuses of these Chinese students.
Well, I think we have to be careful there, because just like we can't understand the pressure they're under, they can't understand what the United States is like in the same way as if they were here. And, Chinese students, particularly undergraduate students in a non-research setting on campus, I think that's a different thing than people, technical research, calling back the results to the mock lab in China somewhere. I think we need to be really careful about this, because I think I'm going to go to Mr. Pottinger next. It seems to me that there is a likely change in a mindset here. We all know that China has a huge demographics problem, and I don't want to go down the demographics trail. The trail I want to go down is there are millions of young Chinese adults who in their whole life they've had two parents who were totally focused on them, and four grandparents who had one grandchild also totally focused on them, in a country that had more things to share, more ways to buy things for that one grandchild. Are they going to have the same response to the increasingly repressive Chinese Communist Party that the generation before have had? Are we seeing some likely pushback from young Chinese adults who've had basically all the attention you could possibly ask for their entire life and almost everything they wanted to have from parents and grandparents?
Yeah, Senator, there's been recent reporting, some interesting reports have been written about sort of this ennui that is afflicting the younger generation of Chinese young men and women. I think that that the Communist Party has systematically removed from Chinese culture so many of the elements that could enrich people's lives, including faith, including what had been in the late 90s into the early 2000s a growing amount of free exchange and discourse. Those things are now going in reverse. You're seeing the systematic stamping out of civic life, whether it's secular or religious. The most extreme example is the genocide taking place against traditionally ethnic Muslim minorities in Northwest China, but also against Christians and others. And access to outside information is getting more restrictive.
Let me see if I can get, thank you. Let me see if I get one quick question. So Billy Maneva, what of this increasing more restricted society, how is that, in all the ways you've looked at that, how is that coming generation going to react to that in a different way than their parents and grandparents have?
Senator, thanks for the question. I think your premise is correct. We are seeing that kind of slow change, but I would proffer that Xi Jinping is seeing that same change as well, and he's becoming more draconian. They've become the most impressive surveillance state in the history of the world, not only domestically in China, but as well as we heard here in the U.S. Those 320,000 students who come into the U.S. are forced to have Chinese phones with WeChat, so the Chinese can monitor them here. So when you are here, whether you're a student or a researcher, and you get a call from the Ministry of State Security asking you to do something for them, and your grandmother is sick or your father needs a job, you are going to do whatever they ask you to do. So as much as we see a change in the want of the Chinese young people to get internet, the quicker we see that, the quicker the Chinese Communist Party disallows them to have the internet.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.